Hi everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the process of positioning an animated object that's spinning on sort of a random angle. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to control the rotation of objects within your scenes, especially when they're not aligned to the grid in some way. So where you might have an object that spins and it's on a sort of an odd angle, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating trying to get it to rotate properly. So what I'm going to do is show you a process for taking an animated object and then being able to basically rotate it into whatever position you want and position it, but the animation still functions. So what I've got here is this little scene set up. I've got just this box object with an angle on it, and that's basically going to be the angle that I'm going to place the fan, which is the other object here. So ultimately what I want is the fan to be sticking out of the angled section of this box. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just create a basic spinning animation for the fan. And I'm going to be doing this just using the set key and the channel box up here. So what we want to do is rotate this on rotate Y. So I'm just going to punch in 359 degrees. So and then set that. So what that's doing basically is giving me a single rotation over about a bit over 2 seconds, something like that. And this is just random. I'm not, trying to be precise here or anything like that. I'm going to try and get this to spin infinitely at a constant speed. So I've got the graph editor open here. I'm just going to select them and create basically a linear tangent. So what I get is just a constant speed for the spin. And then what I can do is if I select that that end keyframe there, let's have a look. I can go to curves post infinity and switch to, let's see, I can never remember which one it is. I might have to actually grab the tangent itself, the curve itself. There we go. So cycle with offset is the option here. So what it's doing basically, it's taking the curve I've already created, and then basically it's just repeating that over and over and over again. But every time it repeats, and it's doing that into infinity, every time it repeats, it starts from the end point of the previous section of the curve. So what it's doing here is it's taking this curve that I've got, and then it's repeating it up to here, but it's starting the start point at this keyframe. So that goes up, and then when it gets to there, it's then repeating it again, starting at that point, and so on. So what you get is this infinite line, which means basically that the fan is just going to keep rotating forever. So it's a nice way of being able to add sort of automatic sort of movement, so to speak. I'm just going to kill off all of my other channels here that I've got keyed, because I don't need them. I only need the rotate Y. So basically what will happen is this thing will just keep spinning. You can see there we're now beyond the final keyframe that I made, and it's still going. So we get this nice rotation. And the nice thing about that is you can actually just very quickly increase the speed if you want. So if you want to increase the speed, what you do is you grab this this keyframe here and you just move it up. And the higher up you make it, the faster the spinning gets, like that. So that's just a nice little trick. Okay, so how do we get this thing attached in a way that I can angle it into a particular spot, right? So the issue here is I've sort of already rotated this thing, and you can see the actual rotate handle will move with the object. It changes angles depending on the actual object itself, because I've animated the rotation. And partially what essentially is causing that is the rotate tool. If we pop into the tool settings here, is set to object for the axis orientation. So what that's meaning is the angle that this rotation handle appears at is based on the object's rotation. So if I've animated the rotation on the object, the angle of the handle is going to keep changing based on which direction the object is facing it on any given frame. And because every frame is going to be a different angle, because it's animated, it's going to keep moving. Now technically what we could try is going to object. Okay, switching this up to object, from object to world, just here. What that's going to do is make the angle of the handle always remain kind of locked to the same angle as the grid. Okay, but we could find, potentially, we might have some issues. You know, if we're rotating the object directly and it's already animated to be rotated in this way, you know, we could end up doing something to it which will kind of wreck the animation. So it might not be a good idea to do that. Now that's going to be especially important if we've got all of our channels actually keyframed. I deleted the keyframes that I didn't need, and ultimately that's allowing me to kind of use this particular rotate setting to get the object to sit at that angle there. But if I had some of these other ones rotated, animated as well, I wouldn't be able to just, you know, sort of position it like this directly with the model and the rotate tool, because that would cause me problems. So I'm just going to reset that back to there. Okay, so what we're going to do is, in order to be able to move this to anywhere in the scene and to be able to rotate it to any position and still have the animation working, what we need to do is attach this to something that we can move and rotate and position separately to this object. So the easiest way we could do that is to group the object. Okay. Now what we could do, the other way of doing it would be maybe creating a curve here and then connecting this object to that curve. Then we can move the curve or rotate the curve and this would go with it. But basically doing a group is exactly the same process. It's just a different object that we're attaching it to. So let's go to the edit menu and then let's go down to group, which is Control or Command G if you're on a Mac. Okay, there we go. And if I grab my move tool, you'll notice that the group, we're now in group 1. Okay, we've got this group, and the pivot point is basically down in the middle of the grid, same spot as the pivot point for the fan. Now I'm going to rename this. It's always a good idea to rename everything as you make them, or once you've completed a particular part of the model. So I can move this around, and wherever I place this, the animation is still going to work. Because what I'm doing is I'm moving the group. I'm not moving the fan directly. Technically, we could still move the fan and it would work. But as I said before, you know, if we start to rotate the fan into a particular angle, we might kind of interfere with the fan itself if we're doing the rotation directly on the fan. In this situation, because I've got the fan in a group and I'm moving the group around, when I select the fan again directly, you can see that the fan still thinks that it's in the middle of the grid. Its translates and its other unkeyframed attributes are all at 0 still. So the fan actually thinks it's back over here because we didn't select the fan and move the fan. We selected the group it was in and we moved the group. Okay, so you can see here the fan is selected currently. If I select the group, you can see that the translates are sort of random because I'm moving it around. So what this means is we can basically take the group and we can pop it up here, something like this, and then we can rotate the group like this so that it's sort of on that angle. And when we press play, you can see that the fan is working perfectly well. Now we could animate the group as well. We could animate the group to move, you know, or do other things. We could animate the group to rotate, and it would not impact on the animation of this particular object itself. This object is always going to animate the way that we've keyframed it, and then is also going to be moved by however we move the group that it's in, or animate the group that it's in. So sometimes what you can do when you're rigging your models is you can use these groups in order to position even a group of objects that you've animated together. So if you're animating a bunch of components of an object so that they're all kind of moving, you know, the way you would expect them to, you can then select all of them, group that selection, and then actually move the group to move all of those components into the position you want. You know, so for example, it might be part of a machine, it might be, you know, maybe a robot, or like some kind of spaceship or something like that, or a transformer type character. You can get all these little bits and pieces all moving together by just normally animating them, group them all together, and then position them within the bigger structure of your machine or your character. So that's how to use a group for positioning an animated object. I'm going to leave this video here, and I'll see you again soon.